Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the weekly press briefing of the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, where we aim to provide journalists with an update on the latest developments at the court and the opportunity to ask questions. In the case of Hashim Thaçi, Kadri Veseli, Recep Selimi, and Jakub Krasniqi, the trial panel on 16th October granted in part a request by the Krasniqi defense to admit into evidence 39 additional exhibits and add 2 items to their exhibits list. The panel granted the admission into evidence of 30 exhibits and 1 additional exhibit in part, finding them relevant to the case, authentic at first impression, and, given that the parties can make submissions on their weight and probative value, considered them not to be outweighed by any prejudice. The panel also granted the addition of 2 items to the exhibits list. The panel denied the admission into evidence of 8 items and 1 in part, finding them not to be relevant to the case, as they are either not connected to any of the charges in the indictment, or they relate to an activity by the KLA in a location not relevant to the charges, or they provide evidence on crimes committed by Serbian forces, which are also not part of the indictment and as such not relevant to the charges. On 16th October, the trial panel granted in part a request by the prosecution to take judicial notice of 68 facts which have been adjudicated in the case of Pietar Shala. The panel took judicial notice of 66 of these facts, finding they fulfill the relevant conditions for adjudicated facts as determined in the Rules of Procedure and Evidence. The panel rejected 2 of the facts. The defense objected to most of the facts, arguing that at this stage of the proceedings, its ability to challenge the accuracy of the proposed facts is limited, and as such, it would compromise the panel's truth-finding duties. The panel, however, noted that it had not been alerted that any of the defense teams wished to tender any evidence in rebuttal of any of the facts in question, adding that if the defense teams wished to do so, the panel would consider such an application. Given that the facts in question are mostly corroborating in nature, the panel found that all defense teams have had and still have the opportunity to challenge the accuracy and seek to rebut any of the proposed facts. The hearings initially scheduled for next week in this case have been cancelled for logistical reasons. The next hearing is scheduled for Monday, 3rd November, starting at 9 in the morning. In the case of Hashim Thaçi, Izni Kilay, Bashkim Smakay, Fadil Fazliu, and Hayreddin Kuchi, related to allegations of the illegal influencing of witnesses, the pretrial judge on 17th October granted a request by the prosecution to disclose to the defense additional evidence that was obtained past the deadline for disclosure of such material. According to the prosecution, the said material included extracted data from previously disclosed electronic device and supplements providing additional clarity to previously disclosed items. The pretrial judge found that the additional materials provide notable supplementary and contextual information, which will improve the overall understanding and assessment of the evidence introduced by the prosecution. She also took note that they were identified as subject to disclosure under Rule 102 only in the course of the prosecution's preparation of its pretrial brief, and recalled that the proceedings were at pretrial stage where a certain level of flexibility must be maintained. Mindful of the rights of the accused and for the defense to have sufficient time to prepare for their case, the pretrial judge noted that the defense is already familiar with the majority of the additional materials and that they do not present any novel aspects in the case of the prosecution. She also found the materials to be limited in scope, volume, and complexity, and concluded that permitting their disclosure will not cause any prejudice to the accused. Also on 17th October, the pretrial judge rejected a request of the Kilai defense to extend the deadline to submit their pretrial briefs based on an announcement by the prosecution that they will soon disclose material they may find on the seized phone of Mr. Kilai once it is forensically analyzed. The Thachi and Kuchi defense joined the request. The pretrial judge found Mr. Kilai's argument that the prosecution's evidence in support of their case may change once the material on the phone is reviewed misguided, and pointed out that at this stage of the proceedings, any additional evidence can only be considered supplementary without changing the content and nature of the charges. Mr. Kilai's argument that the prosecution may file an addendum to their current pretrial brief she considered speculative and premature at this stage, assuring the parties that, should that happen, she will take the necessary measures to ensure the fairness of the proceedings and the rights of the accused. The pretrial judge recalled that the defense is under no obligation to file a pretrial brief at all, and did not find that the defense presented good cause for an extension of the deadlines. As such, she invited the defense again to file their pretrial briefs, if they wish to do so, by 20th October 2025. On 16th October, the Supreme Court issued a decision on the timelines concerning Mr. Pieter Schala's request for protection of legality, and ordered the prosecution and victims' counsel to file their respective responses to the request by 3rd December 2025, and Mr. Schala to file his reply to their responses, if any, by no later than Friday, 16th January 2026. In other news, the outreach team of the specialist chambers has been in Kosovo this week to explain the mandate and proceedings of the court to interested groups and answer people's questions. They met with law students in Gjilan and Peja and with the local community in Janjevo. That was all from me. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to respond.